So, we're going to talk about today is purchase CEMA and why is it good for seller and the buyer. So, anybody knows what purchase CEMA is? Let me get my notes. So, purchase CEMA is mainly for condo and a house. What is purchase CEMA? You know, when people buy houses or a condo, they have to pay mortgage tax if they take the mortgage. Now, mortgage tax is amount of the mortgage you take, and depending on how much you take, you have to pay percentage to stay in the city. So usually, if it's in a 5 borders of New York, it's usually 1.8% if below 500. And if it's 500 and higher, it's 1.9 to 5%. So what CEMA is, if the seller has, let's say for example, if a purchase price is $1 million, and the client takes $800,000 mortgage, but seller has outstanding mortgage of 500. The way CEMA works, on the outstanding balance of the seller, you don't have to pay mortgage tax. So you're only going to pay the difference of 800 and 500. So your mortgage of 800 subtract seller's mortgage of 500. Now you're only going to pay $300,000 mortgage, which is 1.8%. If you have to pay the whole mortgage of 1.8%, so let's say you have 800,000 multiply 1.925%, you would pay 15,400. If you only have to pay mortgage tax on the difference, which is 300, then you're only going to pay 5,400. So it's $10,000 savings for you. Now, how does it work? The CEMA starts by preparing the document.
Hold on. Let's slow down and go backwards.
Okay? Sure.
How much is mortgage tax?
So in New York State, it's 1.8% up to $500,000, and 1.925% over $500,000.
1.925. And that is based off the mortgage or the mortgage tax?
Mortgage. So whatever the mortgage multiplied by percentage of mortgage tax. Below 500 is 1.8%. 500 and above is 1.925. That's a 1 to 3 family house. 4 family house, mortgage tax is much higher. It's over 2%.
So purchase CEMAs can only be done for condos and private houses.
Correct. Why is a purchase CEMA is not done on the co-ops? Anybody know?
Always question.
Why purchase CEMA is not done on a co-op?
Not too much.
It's not real property.
It's not real property. There is no mortgage tax. Because there is no mortgage tax, there is no CEMA to be done. You understand? So CEMA is only done on property that seller paid mortgage tax. If the seller didn't pay mortgage tax, then there is nothing to file. But because seller already paid mortgage tax, then the CEMA will be able to be done. So, how does it? Why is it good for the buyer? It saves money. It saves, depending on how much is the mortgage of the seller. If it's a mortgage, very small mortgage seller has, it doesn't pay to do CEMA. Because CEMA takes time and takes money. So if the mortgage is $150,000, there's not a lot of savings. Because who prepares it? Seller attorney starts with the seller's lender. They prepare it, and then buyer attorney checks it, bank attorney checks it, and then they file the CEMA at the closing. Now, usually CEMA costs roughly about $1,500 to prepare, so it's still worth it if your mortgage is above 300,000, seller's mortgage. If the seller's mortgage is, let's say, 500,000, then a buyer will save at least 10 grand. Now, what's the disadvantage of CEMA? Disadvantage of CEMA, it does take time. Disadvantage of CEMA, if it's not properly filed, the city and state will come back to you many years after and say, oh, it was not filed correctly. So whoever does CEMA, they have to make sure that it's done correctly. Why is it benefit for the buyer and seller? The seller also saves money. Whatever, when the CEMA is done, the seller saves on transfer tax. So the transfer tax is also 1.8%. So if buyer have doing CEMA on $500,000 over outstanding balance of the mortgage for a seller, seller is not paying transfer tax of that money. So both parties benefit. Again, what's a disadvantage for seller? It does take time. The seller side doesn't pay for preparation of CEMA. Buyer side pays for it. The only disadvantage for seller, if they are not crime reported very quickly, CEMA does takes a little longer to close, depending on their bank, how fast their bank prepares documents for the buyer's attorney, buyer's bank attorney to review the documents for filing. So the only disadvantage, if a seller have to do it quickly, if the sale have to happen in 30 days, CEMA is not possible. CEMA, you would need about 60 days, sometimes even a little bit longer. So if you have a seller who is doing the transaction with CEMA and they don't have to pay transfer tax, they also could save 10 grand easily. So the benefit for both parties is significant mortgage tax saving. Mortgage tax calculated on the balance of the loan of the seller, not a buyer. So whatever mortgage is a seller's mortgage, that's what they save. Because a buyer, let's say buyer takes a less mortgage, then the saving will be on what buyer takes the mortgage. So for example, let's go back to $1 million property. Let's do $800,000. Now the buyer is putting $500,000 in a down payment and only taking $300,000 mortgage. But the seller's mortgage is $500,000. So the buyer is not going to save on $500,000 on mortgage tax. The buyer will only save mortgage tax on $300,000, which is 1.8%. It's lower of the two. Does that make sense? Or I go too fast?
I went too fast.
Okay. Yeah, this is, for me, it's like, okay. So, how much is the seller save? Seller will save as much as the buyer saves. If the buyer takes a lower mortgage versus what mortgage seller has, it calculates saving lower of the two. The seller mortgage or a buyer's mortgage.
Talking about a call.
Whichever.
Call.
The
No,
law
not
doesn't
necessarily.
have no more,
Any sale.
any property other than
Condo or
condo
house?
or a house.
No.
Because a mortgage tax only on the condo or house. Co-op, thanks God, doesn't have mortgage tax yet.
Understood.
Okay? So how does it calculate the same? It's lower of the two mortgages. The seller's mortgage or buyer's mortgage, right? So if the buyer's mortgage lower than seller's mortgage, then he's gonna save percentage of his mortgage.
You're talking about the mortgage
Mortgage
that's
tax.
owned in the property, still seller has in the property. When you say seller's mortgage, what are you talking about?
So let's say a seller selling a house, and he has a mortgage on
Oh, the
that house,
balance with the okay.
the balance of the mortgage, right? So he's selling the house for $800,000, and he has a $500,000 mortgage. Buyer is buying for $800,000, but he only gonna take $300,000 mortgage.
Okay.
He would file a mortgage, CEMA, the purchase mortgage. So it's gonna be 1.8% of 300,000. So roughly, he's gonna save a little, like 5,000 minus, let's say, $2,000 for fees. So he's still gonna save $3,000. If the buyers,
If it's lower than what the seller owns in property.
correct, he's gonna save only on his mortgage. Because what do you file with CEMA? CEMA is a mortgage tax on the property you purchase.
Okay.
If you only take a mortgage tax lower than a seller's mortgage, you're only gonna save tax on amount you take it from a bank.
Which usually never happens, because usually they do the 10.
If they buy here, there is no mortgage insurance.
Okay.
Mortgage insurance is, mortgage tax is only on amount of mortgage you take. In the 5 boroughs of New York, is 1% goes to the state, the city, and 0.4%, 1.4% goes to the city, and altogether is 1.8%. And then between city and state, they break it down.
So same example, if the buyer takes 700,000 mortgage, what happens?
And if a seller has only $500,000,
Yes.
he's gonna save taxes on $500,000.
The buyer.
Right. And the seller will save transfer tax on $500,000.
So both, so say,
Both of them have a $500,000. So I'm gonna do it. And that's why if it's only benefit one party, it's not worth it for the seller to wait an extra month. If it's a benefit both, it's both saving. Because let's say, for example, if you sell a $2 million property, and the seller has a $1 million mortgage, right? And the buyer, when he buys, he takes a $1 million mortgage. Now, on the $1 million, 1.9 to 5%, let's make it easier, 2%, right? On the $1 million, 2% is 20 grand. So 20 grand buyer saves minus fees, and 20 grand seller saves. And he doesn't have the fees. Fees are usually paid by the buyer. So it's a huge advantage. And it's a great, as a real estate agent, it's a great opportunity for you to advertise your property that says, oh, we might be able to do CEMA transaction on the purchase. Now, how do we check if a CEMA transaction can be done? It depends on seller's bank.
when you CEMA, how do you spell that? Because I want-
CEMA. MA. Usually, how did it all start? Usually, CEMA was done on refinances. Because a buyer already paid a mortgage tax, and now all they do is refinance their mortgage. So they do CEMA transaction, they don't have to pay mortgage tax again. Now, not every bank does CEMA, so that's very important for you when you take the listing. Take a copy of a mortgage and check if CEMA transaction is possible before you advertise.
How you do that? Can you Google it, the property or not?
You gotta ask the seller, how much mortgage do you have? Or you could go in the geodata, and it's a public record, the mortgage recording, and you could see who they have a mortgage with, and then double check with the attorney if they could do CEMA transaction. Not every attorney does CEMA transaction. So specifically, some attorneys does CEMA transaction. So, for example, in our company, the bank attorney we use, all the time they don't do CEMA transaction. But there's other two companies, they do CEMA transaction. So we have to give that deal to the company that does CEMA transaction.
It says what is it? Consolidation, extension, and modification agreement, that's what it is?
Mm-hmm. It's modified agreement not to pay mortgage tax again. Because the mortgage tax previously were paid on that property. So, what is CEMA? CEMA. CEMA allows the buyer to take over the seller's existing mortgage lien amount and combine it with a new mortgage from the lender. Instead of paying mortgage recording tax on the entire new loan, the buyer only pays mortgage tax on the new money. Okay? So if the seller has a higher mortgage than a buyer, then it's not new money. They're only gonna save on the money they take. If the buyer's mortgage is higher than seller's mortgage, then they have to pay tax only on the new money. Meaning, mortgage they're taking minus seller's mortgage, the difference considered new money. Benefit for the buyer. Significant mortgage tax savings. For example, purchase price $1 million, loan amount $800,000. The mortgage tax calculator is only $800,000. With a CEMA, seller's existing mortgage balance is $500,000. New money is $300,000. Mortgage tax paid only over $300,000. So it becomes a lower closing cost, reducing my mortgage recording tax, more cash available for reserves, renovation, or down payment, or buy downs rate. Same interest rate on the loan terms. So interest rate on loan terms doesn't change. The only thing changes is the savings for both parties. Same interest rate on terms.
Wait, hold on a second. The interest rate that the old, when you say the interest rate doesn't change, you can't pick up the old rate.
No. Interest rate you're getting from a bank cannot change because you're taking CEMA. You cannot take the interest rate from a seller.
It's not an assumable mortgage,
not
it's
an
different than
assumable-
that.
Correct. But you're not going to increase the interest rate or decrease interest rate because you're doing CEMA. So your terms of the loan doesn't change. The only assumption of the loans are done, VA loan and FHA loan.
You guys get that? The only two loans that you can assume are VA loans and FHA loans.
And that means you have to live in the property as a prime residence.
You have to be a prime, it has to be a prime resident in order to assume a mortgage.
Yep.
Okay? But
That's
with,
what they're right.
but with purchase CEMA, you can buy it as an investor
Yes.
and take advantage of the savings.
Savings
So
of
you can't
the mortgage
assume
tax.
a loan
Correct.
for an investment property, but you could do a CEMA.
Correct.
All right? And then the savings for the CEMA for the buyer is less mortgage tax.
Correct.
The saving for the seller is less transfer tax.
Correct. So benefits for the seller, make property more attractive. Buyers might save thousands. Can have property stand out in competitive market. Potentially faster sell, meaning that because it has more options for people to bid and they could sell it. No direct cost to the seller. Sellers typically not paying for the mortgage tax savings. Buyer received most of the benefits, but seller received as much. Negotiation advantage. Instead of saying, oh, I reduce the purchase price by 10,000, seller could say, we could do CEMA transaction. Answer. Potential disadvantages for the buyer. Longer closing timeline. Existing lender must prepare CEMA documents. Additional conditions required. Additional attorney work, more legal documentation, additional legal review. Additional fees for the buyer.
Hold on a second. What is the expected timeline for a CEMA?
Usually 60 days.
Okay.
Seller lender prepares the CEMA and the fees are passed on to the buyer. Attorney fees and processing fees also usually save money on a large loan amount. If a mortgage tax savings are minimal, the additional fees might not be worthwhile. So before they do the CEMA, they have to determine how much seller has a mortgage and how much saving you're gonna have versus expenses. If the mortgage is below 200,000, even in New York is numbers. Okay? Anything, in my opinion, anything is, I would say 300,000 above is a good saving.
So what we're looking like, let's say I take a buyer, I show a few properties, so I have to see the balance that they own in each for each
Yeah.
loan, to see if there is any kind of extra savings for the buyer.
Yes.
Is that what we're
And
looking
also you gotta find out which lender owns the seller's,
for?
mortgage.
See if they have this program, CEMA.
See if they are CEMA.
Are there known lenders that don't do it?
I would say, let's say for example, mortgage banker, filed it, and it's not known bank, they might not be able to do it, but don't assume they cannot do it, always ask.
Is this a new program or it's been there?
It's always worked done for refinances, always. But it became more popular on the purchases for many years already. Now, why they don't, really, why they don't do it? It takes a little longer time. Seller sometimes wants to sell it quicker, and buyer might want to buy it quicker. And a lot of transactions happen with a cash transaction. So
But you could use this if, like, I have a seller that is in no rush, they have a longer timeline. So if you have that, then you can actually use that as a way to say, okay, I could save the buyer,
10 grand, 5 grand.
yeah, 10,000 in closing cost savings.
In balance is less. Why in balance is less? Because the mortgage tax in Fireball in New York is higher than mortgage tax in Long Island.
How much less?
So in mortgage tax in Long Island usually is like 1%. Mortgage tax in New York, on a $500,000 above, usually is 1% in Long Island. In New York is 1.95. So it's almost 1% higher in New York. Big difference.
It's half a percent higher, the difference?
1.95 on a half a million. Almost 1%. Now, let's say you are a listing agent, right? Right away, reach out, tell your sellers, and listen, we could advertise with CEMA, purchase CEMA transaction. Can I have a copy of your mortgage bill? Once you get a copy of a mortgage bill, you could send it to the lender, who you're working with or us, and find out, can a CEMA transaction be done with this lender? That's because they have a mortgage, not every lender will do CEMA transaction. For example, many years ago, HSBC would not do CEMA transactions, even on the refinance to other banks. So we gotta double check before we advertise that. Once you get a copy of a mortgage, then you'll be able to research and say if a CEMA could be done. Once you know that the CEMA done, you would advertise for the same. You will even have their attorney prepare in advance, so this way the transaction will be much quicker.
Have you done any recently?
I have done many when we were in the Freedom Mortgage. That's why I knew Freedom does a CEMA transaction. In Citizens Bank, I didn't do that many, but I know that our bank advertised heavily on the CEMA transaction in the purchases.
It seems to be a little bit confusing for the buyers and the sellers, and who gets what discounts and the time.
It shouldn't be if you explain it well, right? So basically, the buyer saves on the transfer tax of the existing, the buyers pay on the mortgage tax on the existing loan amount.
Of the seller.
Okay.
And seller saves on transfer tax for the balance of their mortgage. So everybody's saving.
The seller saves transfer tax on the balance of their existing mortgage.
Correct.
So that same amount that the buyer's gonna save in mortgage tax, the seller's gonna save in transfer tax.
Correct.
if they use this program, the CEMA.
Yes, CEMA transaction.
What's
It's
the-
it's called purchase CEMA transaction. It's known on all banking levels.
Okay.
But we have a lot of sellers that are worried about transfer tax. How much do I have to pay in transfer tax?
Right.
Well, we have a way for you to save money on transfer tax and
It'll take
also,
an extra 30 days.
give a benefit to the buyers.
Right.
Right? So both sides could win if you present this, and you could just use this as a way to secure the listing. Because you could say a lot of other agents don't know about this, so they can't even present this.
Yeah, but you're offering to the seller something that it might not happen because the buyer could not use this program because they have their own lender. The lenders don't use this.
It's not about the buyer's lender, it's about the
It's not
seller's.
just about,
No,
no, it's more about, so you remember, you sell it on a balance of what seller owns. Who prepares it? Seller's lender prepares the CEMA. The only way it's not gonna work if seller's lender cannot prepare CEMA or will not prepare CEMA.
It's
Buyer.
seller's lender.
Seller's lender.
Seller's lender is gone, and he's gonna get paid off.
the seller's bank.
Seller-
Seller's bank will get paid off, but seller bank, before he gets paid off, prepares CEMA paperwork. So the lender pays, lender attorney, seller lender attorney prepares paperwork, seller attorney reviews it, then a buyer attorney reviews it, and the bank attorney confirms it and files. And
So it has to come from the seller's.
correct, the whole game starts as a seller. In order for the whole transaction to work, both parties have to benefit. If it's only benefit one party, it never will work. And that's why they did benefit for both parties. Okay, so potential disadvantage to seller. Seller must cooperate with the lender and attorneys. So the lender is their lender. They have to make sure that the lender can do it and their attorneys. Now, after seller attorneys, it goes to buyer attorneys and the bank attorneys. Seller lender might take weeks to provide documents. Again, it's their lender, the seller's lender. Lender's fee. Existing lender might charge CEMA processing fee, but those are usually paid by the buyer. More complex transaction.
Hold on a second, what documents would the seller have to provide?
Copy of a mortgage and contact of their lender.
That's it.
That's it. And then the lender have to be willing to do the CEMA transaction, CEMA paperwork. More complex transaction, just what you said, it's more moving parts than a standard purchase transaction, but both parties save money. When does the CEMA make sense? Generally works best when loan amount is large. So my opinion is $300,000 in 5 boroughs in New York. If it's $300,000 in Long Island, if you're gonna save 1,000, it's not worth it. So I would say Long Island, 400 to 500,000.
When you say large, means
In New York State, in New York, not state, in 5 boroughs of New York, 300,000. Because think about it, let's make it easy math. 300,000 multiplied 1.925%. It's about 5,800, right? Let's say CEMA costs us 2,000. You still save 3,800. That's a good save. On the 3,800, you could buy down to one for about 1/8 quarter or sometimes 0.37. Or it would contribute for a closing cost, 5,800. And you don't need to have seller concession. Those are just money is given to the buyer by saving mortgage tax. If it's $1 million, it's almost 2%, so you're saving about 19,000. Subtract $2,000 cost, it's $17,000 savings. That's a lot of money. That covers half of your closing costs.
why is not advertised?
It it does. And if you check with the lender you're working with, it's definitely possible, you definitely do a lot, but it does take time. And a lot of, in multi-wheel houses goes at the hot potatoes, not every seller is willing to do it, and not every agent knows about it.
But they'll be willing to do it if the money,
If the money is there.
yeah, if it's like, okay,
Really does.
well, what, yeah, it's like, okay, you have an offer on the table, and the offer is a little bit less net to the owner.
Right.
You could present it like, hey, if we do a purchase CEMA, it'll actually save you this much money.
And
So
that goes
essentially, you're netting more. It's as if we're selling the house for this
40
much.
grand more. Now, keep in mind, when you take the listing, my suggestion will be start right away. Because if you're gonna start seeing a transaction at the time of you taking the listing, you could be 3 to 4 weeks ahead of you.
Oh, but you're saying that the seller doesn't incur costs for the CEMA. So if you start first, is there an expense that's incurred?
Well, you know you're gonna sell the house.
You know you're gonna sell the house, but if the buyer doesn't take advantage of the CEMA,
Correct.
then who pays the fee?
Yeah. But on a $2 million properties or $1 million property, how many cash buyers happen in percentage wise? Let's say 30%. So on the 70%, you're still gonna save ahead of the game. And when you.
But if you prepare it early, then the sellers would have to pay the fee
And then they'll pass it on to the closing.
if the buyer takes advantage.
If the buyer. That's something you could give seller as an option. Again, 30% you could get cash purchases, but 70% still buy with mortgage on a big purchase again, right?
Does it apply for investment property?
Yes. It doesn't matter how you buy.
This is from our lending money.
No. You see, that's what I'm saying. You gotta double check that the hard lending money is willing to do CEMA transaction. So a lot of times you have a hard lending money or you have seller financing. They might not be able to do that. Because it depends if, how they file the tax,
If it takes longer, then it might not work because the costs won't set fast.
Correct. And if it's hard money, the hard money lender might not be able to do the CEMA transaction. That's why you gotta get the copy of the mortgage from outstanding from the seller and do due diligence. See if that bank can do the CEMA transaction. Some banks, like I said, HSBC in the past, even on the refinances, they would not do the CEMA transaction. Forget about purchases. So some banks will. Most of the banks will do it, but some banks will not do it.
I like what you say when you say 20,000.
If you sell a small house, again, it depends. You gotta calculate the benefit versus the expense. So let's do, so what does CEMA make sense? Loan amount is large. Existing mortgage balance is substantial, not small, okay? Buyer and seller have flexibility in closing timeline. Property located in New York where mortgage according tax apply. So if you're selling in Connecticut, New Jersey, in New Jersey there is no mortgage tax. Only the biggest mortgage tax in the 5 borough New York, but also in Long Island. In Long Island right now, property sells much higher, and even 1%. Let's say they sell it for $1 million, 1% is 10 grand. Subtract 2,000 for closing, repair, paperwork. You still save 8 grand. 8 grand saving from both parties. Or let's say for another example, purchase price $1.5 million, loan amount $1.05 million. Seller existing mortgage is $700,000. New money $350,000. So you say $1.05 million new mortgage, buyer's mortgage, subtract $700,000 seller's mortgage, new money is 350. So without CEMA on $1,050,000, that would have cost, so you do 1,050,000, multiply 1.9, so 5%. It would cost 20 grand. On 700,000, multiply 1.925, it's only 13,000, right? So let that add 2 grand for expenses and say, now on the new money will be 15,000, the versus the 20,000, so it's substantial savings. Key takeaway for real estate agents: a CEMA can save buyers thousands of dollars in the mortgage recording tax while making listing more attractive. The trade-off is additional paperwork and additional longer closing timeline. On the larger loans, the savings often far exceed the extra cost. As a loan officer, we could check it out now. On the co-op transaction, don't even mention because you do not pay mortgage tax. It's only on a condo, multi-family house. You might also want to add real estate live 1 million purchase example for actual New York City mortgage tax savings. So the trend to get agent attention. So right now what we're talking about on the co-ops, they also want to do mortgage tax, but they have not approved it yet. So right now, all it's going to do is a condo and not a 4-family house. 1 to 3 family house, the mortgage tax is the same. On a 4-family house, the mortgage tax is 2.2%, it's much higher. It is complicated, but it's fun and it can be done. Just check with it, if you guys send me the mortgage of a seller, I could double check for you to see if the seller's bank would do the CEMA transaction. You have any questions? Did I lose anybody?
We lost everybody.
I lost everybody, okay.
They all fall asleep.
So this is primarily there for sellers,
But
for
I
buyers.
think for both.
It's for both. So it's an opportunity to give the seller a savings. What do they say?
They say transfer that.
I'm asking these guys.
Oh,
What do they say?
1.9 on the,
No. They save 1.9 on the transfer tax. They save whatever the transfer tax is for what the buyer saves on mortgage tax, right? So if it's less than 500,000, then it's not 1.9%, it's 1.14,
1.8,
1.8, right?
1.4 or something.
Yeah, over 500,000 is 1.8, right?
Yeah.
So are they assuming
No,
No,
they're not
mortgage
taking
is not assumed.
they're not taking the other person's mortgage. All they're doing is not paying the mortgage tax on the old money,
okay.
right? So the buyer still has to pay the mortgage tax on the new money
Correct.
over the seller's existing mortgage.
Correct.
But if your seller has a big mortgage, then there's an opportunity for the buyer to save more.
If the buyer mortgage is less than seller mortgage, then the buyer will save on total of their mortgage.
Sure, so some sellers, when I get the appointment, they say, oh, how much is gonna be my closing cost in the sale?
Right.
So there comes this thing, right? I can tell them.
Yes, usually your closing cost is this. However, we might have ability to save on a mortgage transfer, on a transfer tax by offering purchase CEMA. can I have a copy of your mortgage bill? So I could, so the question one said that when I go on a listing appointment, how do I present that to the seller? So if the seller asks, what's my net? You calculate the real net and says, listen, your net is X. However, can you please give me a copy of your current mortgage bill so I could check and do my due diligence to see if there's ability to do purchase CEMA, where you could save money on transfer tax and the buyer would save money on the mortgage tax. Once they give you a copy of the mortgage bill, pass it on to us, and we could do the due diligence to find out if the seller lender can do CEMA transaction,
No,
purchase CEMA transaction.
the seller will ask me, what is CEMA? You understand?
CEMA, just Google it. It says, is it, do you know what the CEMA transaction? I'm sure.
I saw what it says, but what exactly it means in the language of real estate?
Okay, so in the language of real estate, CEMA means is the saving of transfer tax and mortgage tax.
Okay.
Because seller already paid mortgage tax on their mortgage, whatever outstanding, CEMA transaction could offer that saving to the buyer.
Got it. So
And a seller,
saving in your closing costs,
correct,
a little bit saving in the program, if using this program.
correct. And the closing cost you're gonna save is on the mortgage tax and the transfer tax.
Understood.
What are common issues that agents should watch for when advising their buyers?
You need to make sure, because not every lender does it, you have to make sure it's possible on this transaction. That's why you need to get a copy of a mortgage, outstanding mortgage from a seller and do due diligence before you can confirm it can be done.
When you say not every lender does it, you're talking about the seller's lender,
Correct.
not the buyer's lender,
Correct.
right? So it is the attorneys that arrange the CEMA,
Yes,
not the new loan officer.
correct. So it starts with an attorney from from seller's lender.
Now, does this affect any of the programs from the new lender,
It shouldn't.
right? So let's say,
Because remember, programs and rate doesn't get affected by CEMA. CEMA is a separate transaction that attorneys does not to pay mortgage tax. So let's say you're on a local natural income property, right? And you would get the preferably rate. Now, you still could do CEMA transaction because that has nothing to do with the program. As long as the seller lender can prepare CEMA. I know it's very complicated, and that's why it's not so popular, because it's a lot to take on. The easy way for you to think about it, all you have to do is get a copy of seller's mortgage and just pass it on to the attorney you work with or bank you work with. Have them do the due diligence if this is possible. Then you can come back to the seller and say, oh, I did my due diligence, yes, it's possible, or no, in your transaction, it's not possible.
There's little hope to try to get the listing.
yes, I would say it's a great way to
Absolutely.
get the listing, because at the end of the day, you could net the seller more money.
Even if it doesn't work.
It is also a way for you to get buyer representation, right? Has anybody ever talked to you about the potential use of a purchase CEMA to save thousands of dollars on your mortgage tax? No, nobody's ever discussed that.
It's
Right.
not common, but, and it could start with you guys.
We just will scare some people, that's what I see.
If it scares some people, you
Complicated.
don't have to do it.
what I'm saying.
right? So what did you lose? You already never had it, and now you have opportunity to have it. So it's a win-win, in my opinion, because if you don't present it, it was never presented.
I've had an investor make an offer based on a CEMA. They're like, this is an offer, but I request that the seller do a purchase CEMA.
Yes.
Okay. Some people that have the knowledge, probably.
Yes.
You know.
What is the best way to conclude every, that a seller lender and will allow CEMA?
You're gonna get a copy of the mortgage bill and forward to the lender or attorney, and they will investigate if the CEMA passes. Because if you give me the name, it doesn't make, I won't know, right? That's why we have an office who could check if that particular lender does a CEMA.
So is it based off the lender or based off the loan program that the
Lender,
So then you could tell
correct,
if a bank does it in general,
correct.
like Chase. Do they do it?
Chase does it.
Chase does
Wells does it.
Wells
Citi
does
does
it.
it.
Citi does it.
Freedom Mortgage does it.
Freedom Mortgage,
Right? So when I see the mortgage from Freedom, I said, oh, what? CEMA transaction, right? If I would see a bank that I've never heard of, I would say, you know what, it's not guaranteed, but let's try. Even if the bank does it, nothing guaranteed. We gotta try. The fee is not collected until it's done.
So can I call as a realtor if the seller gives me the statement?
Just,
Can I call and find out?
Hold on, you
Yes.
said the fee's not collected till it's done.
I'll double check if the lender collects the fee at the closing or collect the fee upfront.
So if you're telling me it doesn't get collected when it's done, then when I sit down with the seller, I could say, let's get started on a purchase CEMA,
And then,
so that you could get your side of it taken care of. If the buyers take advantage of it, then you both save. If the buyers don't take advantage of it, then you won't
I'll
get
triple
charged.
check for you, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
Okay? I know that they usually, it's like on the refinances, right? Unless we close, the CEMA fee doesn't kick in, but I'll double check on the purchase fee. That would be awesome. And I'll double check for you. But definitely get a copy of the mortgage bill, forwarded it, and then so we work with two different attorney offices that does CEMA for Citizens Bank, right? So we have ability to reach out to them and say, look, this bank, please let us know if they do CEMA. Sometimes it's gonna take them a couple of, weeks or so to get back to us because they have to do due diligence to find out if the bank does. And what will it cost? So I tell you, for example, Wells Fargo, right? Wells Fargo does CEMA transaction. In the Wells Fargo, you have to send them $750 certified check in advance for them to start the CEMA transaction, even on the refinance. But some banks, you don't need to pay upfront to do the CEMA transaction. They do it and they collect money. So that's why I'm going to double check as far as the purchase CEMA, how it works.
At what point do you make the buyer aware of the seller's intention to say do this?
The minute you know that the seller, sometimes even seller will advertise, you could do CEMA transaction. So you could make a buyer aware right away.
Well, now you have to get representation from the buyer, right? So it could be something that you talk to them about at the point where you're trying to get that representation.
Correct.
Right? Here's the reason why you want me as your representative, because I have the option of presenting this to sellers that we make offers for. And if the sellers don't agree, it's all right, like you
Right.
already have your representation agreement.
So let's say, for example, you're collecting 2%, right? For, as a buyer agent. And you save them 2%. So basically, and if you get paid by the seller, basically you won the money. I know it's a lot, right? But all you have to remember is request a copy of a mortgage bill from seller.
If I'm a listing, sorry, if I'm a listing agent, can I advertise in the listing that we are?
Only after you confirm it can be done.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If I confirm, I
Yeah.
can say, CEMA.
And always, it's possible to do. That's not guaranteed. Do not guarantee anything. But in
No.
life, what's guaranteed in life? Death and taxes. It's guaranteed. Guarantee you're gonna die, and guarantee you're gonna pay taxes if you make money. Everything else is possible to do.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay? But one, if you know that the seller has a mortgage of 300,000 in no value, it most likely is not worth it. So think about $500,000 or more. Because on a $500,000, you save 1%, it's $5,000. Minus 2,000 for cost, it's $3,000. $3,000, that's already substantial, in my opinion.
So either party could basically bring up the idea of doing a CEMA.
Correct.
Because it's assuming, say, the buyer knows about it, but the seller doesn't, this would be an advantage to them.
For both.
Yeah.
But remember, sellers is a non-preferred, seller lender.
How readily are they available to give you a copy of their mortgage?
Usually everybody has a copy of the mortgage. Even if it's an order paid, they will get a copy of the mortgage.
But that would never be an issue, like if you ask for it, just, hey, I wanna prepare a.
Usually it will, usually it's not going to be a problem. But if there's a problem, who is because the mortgage is filed as a lien. You could see the, who is the lender. It's a little extra work. What I would do, before I go to listing agent appointment, I would go to the GOV and do a lot of research. Who does have a mortgage? How much is the approximate? So let's say they did the loan 5 years ago. You can calculate approximately balance and they did pay more. And they say, oh, by the way, what is your balance of the mortgage? On the listing presentation. Oh, my mortgage is $500,000. And you saw that it was $510,000. That makes sense. They didn't pay more. Oh, is it still this XYZ? Yes. Oh, by the way, I just did the due diligence. It's possible to do CEMA transaction. So when before you go to listing agent appointment, do due diligence.
But you say it's 60 days.
60 days.
So
Usually-
normally in a regular transaction, it's 60 days. So
I would add, no, usually, yeah, then add another 30 days just to be
let's say 90 days. Takes extra 30 days.
That's the thing. It takes extra 30 days as long as a seller lender does it quick. Sometimes it will be quicker, sometimes it. Remember, most of the New York transaction has on or about. So even if you say 60 days, you have extra 30 days. So if you say 90 days, you have more than that.
Because we don't want to overpromise
Correct.
or say something that's not going to happen. We say 60 days, and it takes 120 days, and the seller is going to be pissed off.
Correct. If you get me the name, I can check with the attorneys how fast the lender prepares CEMA. Some banks are quicker than others.
Okay. I'll find out.
Anybody has more questions?
I think I'm understanding what you're saying. It makes sense. So if I can role play on this, if I have a seller
Sure.
that I'm trying to sell their property for $875,000, and they have a existing mortgage of $250,000, and the buyer puts 20% down, the new mortgage is $700,000, but they will save money on the tax. Like for new money would be realistically $450. If that makes sense, I don't know.
But remember, only on 250 they're gonna save money. Only on 250.
Okay.
On 250, and they have to pay the difference on the mortgage tax. Now, on the 250 in the 5 borough of New York, your saving is roughly let's say 2%, you're saving about 4.5 grand, minus 2, it's 2.5 grand. I would say saving is not enough to wait for an extra 30 days.
So Chris, this works better. It works better when they have a bigger mortgage.
Correct.
A bigger mortgage. Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
the larger mortgage the seller has, the more savings they will realize.
Got it. Got it.
Because look, on the 250 is 1.8%, so it's 4,500. Subtract 2 grand, that's 2,500. It's not for the seller to lose 30 extra days for 2,500. If I would be the seller, it's not appealing to me. And it's not really too much appealing to the buyer either. It's not a big difference. But if you talk about $5,000 saving, that's different.
Right. Okay. It's a good program. I like it.
Me too.
Exactly.
I mean, listen, with all this work, most of the time it will work, but there will be times that it's not going to be worth it, or the seller bank will not do it. But at least you show as a real estate agent, you differentiate yourself from everybody else. Am I right, Juan?
Yes, ma'am. It's, I mean, it's a hook to try.
Right.
Can we try with the buyers? What, like, when we,
Same thing with the buyers.
Yeah.
So you know what? I know about the program that might save you some money. However, you need to make sure that the seller's lender does this CEMA program. When we put an offer in, we're gonna put offer with purchase CEMA and see what happens. Because then, when you put your offer, you check with the listing agent who is the lender, and then double check if CEMA is possible.
so, okay, so let's say I'm showing properties, my buyer likes one. So before I put it offer, can I ask the listing agent to see if they can check if that property
If
can
you see
be
what's on
done
Yeah.
with CEMA, so we can go get.
So that's a good question. What I would do if I was presenting the offer and I represent the buyer, I would say, hey, I'll talk to the listing agent. I would say, what is your seller's timeline,
Correct.
right? Like, what's important to them?
Sometimes they say. time to move
Exactly.
out.
They need time to move out, right? They haven't found a place yet. So in that situation, I would say, well, I have a way to give your seller some more time, and I have a way to save them potentially thousands of dollars, right? So now you have a way to get your offer accepted over somebody else's offer.
And save everybody money.
Exactly.
For example, Olga had the listing of the house, and the seller said, we don't want to move out until August. She took the listing in April. So she found a buyer right away, but look how much time they have to wait. They have time to do the CEMA transaction.
That makes sense. Now I understand.
It's the way you present it, but you cannot guarantee.
Nothing's good.
Except
Only,
that's a
only
tax.
say.
With your approach, Vincent, then would that mean it would be better for you to kind of do that due diligence beforehand before even saying that? Would it make more sense to do that?
No, I would present it just to say that I have an opportunity for them,
Okay.
and then we'll check if it works.
Yep.
If it doesn't work, it's no big deal.
You didn't lose anything because you already didn't have
But that is available, so at least.
it. It's
Yeah.
possible.
So for those reasons, you gotta go get the geodata.
It's benefit for both of you guys, as a listing agent or as a buyer representative. And I'll get you the cost, upfront cost response. Anybody else?
Good?
This is good.
You good?
Okay.
All right, thank you, Olga.
Thank you. Anybody confuse you?